Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? It's a beautiful day here at Blakefield. Glad to be here. So when I arrived at Blakefield in late summer 1984, I was fresh from Youth's Benefit Elementary School in Falston, and I knew no one here in my 7th grade class. There was no 6th grade yet. But of course, like many of you are probably doing right now, I was determined to make friends, and most importantly in my mind, to find a spot to fit in. I had an older brother, well, I still have an older brother, who was a sophomore at the time. His name's Mike. He was known around here as Buzz. And I knew some of his friends. Unfortunately, it seemed their job, their role, their main thrust in life was to make fun and bust the chops of us microdons, as we were known at the time. So I figured I'd be better served focusing my friend-making attempts in my 7th grade class. One of the first people I met outside of Sheraton Hall was a guy in a suit carrying a briefcase. And he shook my hand with his free hand, and he said, "Hey, I'm Dan McNeal, and I'm running for class president." To be fair, I didn't even know there was such a thing as a 7th grade class president. I said to myself, who's this guy, the welcoming committee, you know? But he was sincere and fairly charming for a kid fresh out of grade school, so I liked him right away. Fast forward a few weeks, and I found myself also on the ballot for student government, running as vice president with future Blakefield Hall of Famer Craig Ronald as the president. And I said to myself, this election's in the bag. We got Ronald here. We're going to win this thing. So a couple weeks later, we had to do our campaign speeches in front of the whole 7th grade class, of course. And I thought it would be a great idea to slide a few jokes in, of course, because that's what I like to do, including one about Dan and the briefcase. I figured it was low-hanging fruit, right? Well, it turned out that was a really bad idea. It was a really bad idea. That joke crushed any election chances that we had, because what I hadn't realized was that many of my classmates already knew him. They already knew Dan. And when you knew Dan, you knew he was special. And apparently, you didn't make fun of his briefcase. Later that day, I was sitting in class in Sheridan, looked up into the hallway to see a couple of my larger at the time classmates shooting me death stares and making what I can only assume were American Sign Language threats of violence. Not a great start to my Loyola career, to be sure. Dan, of course, went on to win the election, and every election until we graduated in 1990. We became friends. He also 100% deserved the job. He absolutely dedicated himself to leading our class and eventually the student body. Dan was a guy committed to Blakefield like no one that I've known. And whether he realized it or not, he answered that commitment by exemplifying the Ignatian values each of you has the opportunity to embody. And believe me, those values make worthy companions in life. They're like Google Maps to get you through life. Pay attention. They're good things to learn. So fast forward to junior year, fall of 1988, and after a few half-hearted attempts at sports, wasn't my thing, track team, little football, a little bit of lacrosse in middle school, eventually I found music. Of course, I couldn't play an instrument, so, and some here, you know who you are, would say I still can't. So I became the default singer in a rock band called The Abstractions, which feature the illustrious Mr. Tim Bear on guitar. That's right. Before he was physics famous. Also, Mickey Kinkowski, Brad Pollard, who are here with us today, and our friend Pat Westcott, who's on the West Coast. We still play. All of us still play music, and occasionally we get together and we jam. We still record together. And I consider those guys my brothers to this day. So we played our very first show at McDonough High School. It was packed with fellow Dons. A lot of these guys were there. I still have a video from that day, and in the front row is Dan McNeal, smiling like a Cheshire cat, happy to be there, cheering us on. We also played here at Loyola a bunch, including a Battle of the Bands, which Dan helped organize to benefit a soup kitchen in town. And we were trying to be we were trying to be men for others who also happened to rock out a little bit. And we won that Battle of the Bands, playing some U2 songs, some REM. You guys probably have no idea who they are. Rolling Stones, Tom Petty. We played it all. A few songs we'd written. And felt pretty good. We won, feeling strong. And in the afterglow of that, our first brush with rock and roll glory, Dan pulls me aside, just to quietly let me know he'd actually stuffed the ballot box in our favor, ensuring our victory. So, you know, short-lived victories. I shared that story with Kathleen. I don't know if you remember, Dan's sister, shortly after we lost Dan. She said it sounded exactly like something he would do, except he had probably done it for all of the bands. So he was a man for others, all of the others, right? Personally, I still like to think he put a couple extra votes in for us, Kathleen. As I was reflecting and preparing these remarks last week at home in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, where I've lived for the last 20-plus years, I realized a few things. That none of the students here, none of you Dons, were born yet in 2001. So 9/11 certainly doesn't carry the weight for you like it does for our generation. It's probably like Pearl Harbor or Vietnam was for us when we were kids. It's like someone else's black and white memory. That's okay. Hopefully you'll recognize the indelible mark that that terrible, terrible day made here. If only through the scholarship fund in Dan's name, or the new cheering section at Connor Field, which I understand was packed last Friday night. I also understand it wasn't the outcome we were hoping for, but get them next time, right? Dan was a guy who was at every single event, whether it was sports, drama, music like us, everything, always supporting. And he certainly would have wanted to share the Blakefield experience with the deserving recipients of his memorial scholarship. These are fitting legacies. Also, I also realized during my reflection last week that I'm probably older than most of your parents, which is very frightening to me, I have to tell you. Although I know a couple of our guys have kids here, so that's a little bit of a relief for me. And many of you have sat through speeches by my classmates over the years. And these men have worked hard, not just to keep Dan's memory intact, but to create a legacy in his honor. Because he was that special. So I wanted to share with you a few things that I've learned over the years. And certainly these are things that Dan McNeal had figured out long before I had. It's not about being the best athlete, or the guy with the best looking girlfriend, or the best grades, or maybe the guy who throws the best party. Not that these are terrible things, but those are not necessarily the character traits that make the biggest impact in the world. It's often the person who works quietly and consistently behind the scenes doing the work, offering in his or her own unique way love. Maybe it's your coach or your teacher, one of your parents, a sibling. It's likely you don't even realize the impact that these people are having on you yet. And that's okay. One day you'll see it. And I hope when you do, it'll be impactful for you like Noah and Dan was for us. And my greatest hope for you is that one day you look back and you see the impact that you've made on someone's life. Strive to operate from a place of love, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Also, echoing Mr. Day's comments from earlier, be authentic. And that can be a tall order in middle school and high school. I'm half a century old, and I'm still trying to figure it out. And there's roles you probably feel you need to play. Some you do, some you do not. It's tough to see which is which sometimes. A simple rule that I try to follow: seek out the roles that exemplify the best version of you, not what you think other people want you to be. Each of you has that inside. Work to find it. It's worth the effort. Oh yeah. And if you want to wear a suit, wear a suit. If you want to carry a briefcase, carry a briefcase, but carry it with authenticity. So I'd like to say thanks to Kathleen and her mom and her family for continuing to share Dan with us. Thanks also to the faculty and Loyola leadership for welcoming me here today and for supporting our class's efforts to honor our friend. And also to our class, my classmates from 90. Thank you for carrying this torch. I live out of state. It's my first time being at this event. I'm honored to have had the opportunity to share my memories of Dan and spend a little time here today at Blakefield, a place I love. But most importantly, thanks to the Dons, the current Dons, for listening to an old man go on and on about briefcases and bands and such. I appreciate it. However you ended up here at Loyola, know that you are part of something unique and special. And you always will be. Embrace that, like Dan did. I have one more memory, then I'll get out of here. In early 2000, I was living on the eastern shore of Maryland with my beautiful wife, Gina, who's here today. I had just started a business, and we were waiting on the birth of our oldest son, Jake, who's now 22, senior in college. And I drove here the hour and a half from the eastern shore to help plan our 10th reunion here at Xavier. And there were a few guys here at the meeting. It was myself and Dan. It was great. I hadn't been here in a while, and I hadn't seen Dan for a few years. And at the time, Burke Hall was brand new, I think. And after the meeting, as the sun was coming down, Dan and I walked down here. One of the facilities guys happened to see us and let us in. So we had a quick tour. I remember we were both completely blown away. It was such a leap forward for the school. I mean, who knew, right? This is the start of all these beautiful things you see here today, all these beautiful buildings. And I remember Dan beaming with pride. I, of course, was doing my best to crack jokes with Dan, who was always ready with a laugh, regardless of how ridiculous I was trying to be. It was awesome. I'd forgotten how much I enjoyed his company. So outside, we talked for a while. We both, excuse me. We both had to get going. I was heading back to Denton to be with my pregnant wife, and I think Dan went home to visit his family. And of course, the next year we lost Dan. But I will always treasure that night here at Blakefield, one-on-one, with Dan. Thanks for listening. Roll Don's roll.